Shooting victims' families are pushing for donations to be sent their way faster. We've seen this happen here before. A conservative group sues to stop the MLB All-Star Game in Denver. It sends its local allies scrambling for some distance. As America finally learns about the Tulsa Race Massacre, we look at how Colorado came to terms a lot earlier with a terrible chapter in our history. A next viewer's question has us exploring the concept of double immunity from COVID. And street signs, they guide the twists and turns of our lives. So, are they allowed to deceive us?
That's my question too. Can a street sign lie?
What do you think? Can a street sign lie? We'll head out to find the answer next. Families who lost someone in the Boulder King Super shooting are speaking publicly again. They're now asking for Coloradans' support as those families try to access the money donated to nonprofits to help them. John McKenzie, whose wife Lynn Murray was killed in that shooting, is asking the state to audit the funds. John just spoke to our Steve Staker about this, and Steve, he's getting support from some other people who have been in a similar spot.
Yeah, John says that he has support from other victims' families from this shooting, as well as many as 60 other family members of victims and victims themselves from other mass shootings. Now, we've heard calls like this in the past, especially after the Aurora Theater shooting. Back then, the governor had to step in and appoint a special administrator to make sure any donated money got distributed and then decide who got what of the money. Now, the main nonprofit that did the collecting here for the Boulder shooting, the Colorado Healing Fund, says it was founded in part to avoid situations like that and make sure what happened in Aurora didn't happen again.
The stresses of this aren't just psychological, they're physical. You know, I feel like I've aged 20 years in 2 months. You know, I don't even feel like I'm human anymore.
John McKenzie lost the love of his life on March 22nd. In the days and weeks after, he says the loss continued.
I lost my job. My wife's no longer with us, so our income is now zero.
The Colorado Healing Fund, the nonprofit created by former Republican Attorney General Cynthia Kaufman to serve victims and the community following disasters like this, it's raised $4.3 million for Boulder, according to its executive director. So far, they've distributed about 700,000 of it. John started an advocacy group arguing it all ought to be distributed. He says that's what donors would want.
I just don't believe public intent is being fulfilled. There are a number of charities around the United States that do the right thing. You know, they collect money for victims, distribute 100% of it to the victims, and get out of the way. Get on with your life. God bless you.
The Healing Fund does it differently. The organization wouldn't speak to us on camera, but a board member explained that the nonprofit raises money to meet the long-term needs of everyone impacted. He says they distribute the money when a need is demonstrated and make sure the proper support is there.
To tell me you're going to determine my needs? You know, no. You have no idea what those are, not a clue. Healing is, for me, cauterizing a gaping wound, and that's about it. I'm going to have it the rest of my life.
McKenzie wants more transparency from the organization and the ability to move on.
Do I feel like the right thing is being done? I think it's being talked about, but that's all. Clearly, it's not being done.
Now, McKenzie says he also has questions for Community Foundation Boulder County, which was the beneficiary of your Word of Thanks microgiving campaign back in March. Talked to the CEO of that organization today. They announced today that they're giving a $500,000 grant to the Colorado Organization for Victim Assistance, which will divvy that money up, that $500,000 up between the 10 families. The CEO told me that is more money than what donors actually said. You had the choice when you were donating what you could give to. Of the people who said, I want to give to the victims, that actually represents more than what was collected in that case, Kyle.
So, Steve, in the case of the Community Foundation Boulder County, I know they were clear from the start that they kind of saw it as a three-level situation. You had level one, those 10 families. Level two, other people impacted, store employees, folks who were there that day, folks in the neighborhood, that kind of thing. And then level three, kind of last, was broader community healing in the end. And the question was just how would they divvy it up between those three levels?
Yeah, and in this case, they decided with the initial funds they have, they still are collecting money, but with what they have initially was to give a third of that to that group of victims, and then with the remaining $1 million, spread that among the needs of the people who were surrounding and the needs of the community as Boulder continues to recover from this, which is also what the Colorado Healing Fund says its goal is in all of this, to try to support everyone impacted who are going to have needs on a long-term basis.
This begins a new chapter of those conversations, hearing from John. Thank you, Steve. Coors Field is going to be at full capacity next month when it welcomes baseball fans for the 2021 MLB All-Star Game. That is, provided that a conservative business group does not succeed in blocking the game. A group called the Job Creators Network is suing to stop the game in Denver, and now that group's local allies are scrambling to get away from that lawsuit. So the game was moved to Coors Field from Atlanta after Georgia Republicans passed a law restricting voting. The state of Colorado estimates that game will generate tens of millions of dollars in revenue here. The conservative business group's lawsuit demands that the All-Star game be moved back to Georgia and asks for $100 million in damages for small businesses in the Atlanta area. Several Colorado organizations are listed as partners on the Job Creators Network website. You can imagine they did not love getting asked about it today. CU Regent and possible Republican candidate for governor Heidi Ganahl is the network's former chairperson. She told us she's off the board, wasn't involved in this lawsuit. She said that she wants the All-Star game in Denver, but said that how it played out was not fair to business owners in Georgia. The Colorado Restaurant Association tells us they are partners with this business network in name only. Said they don't give them financial support, had nothing to do with the lawsuit. The Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce was also listed as a partner of this conservative business group. The chamber said they're unaware that they were partners with them, and they'll try to get their name off the website. Today marks 100 years since a horrific act of racist violence that America long ignored, the Tulsa Race Massacre. White mob tore apart the thriving black community of Greenwood, Tulsa. They looted, they burned buildings, and murdered hundreds of black Americans. Today, President Joe Biden became the first U.S. president to participate in a remembrance ceremony for that massacre. Now, no two events or our responses to them are the same, but it certainly seems like Colorado has embraced a more honest retelling of a similar terrible chapter in our history, the Sand Creek Massacre, November 1864, when hundreds of Arapaho and Cheyenne were killed by U.S. Army volunteers in what is now Kiowa County. We wondered why one event had been part of local history lessons for decades, while Oklahomans say the Tulsa Race Massacre was largely ignored even locally. And perhaps our perception of that is not accurate.
The information that makes it into the textbooks usually starts when researchers begin to uncover it and write about it. Otherwise, the people writing the textbooks aren't aware of it. So there has been a lot of research on the Sand Creek Massacre, both archaeological and anthropological research. I don't think as Colorado we deserve credit for doing this. I think this is just sort of the way the field has evolved, that pushed scholars to to reveal the story of the Sand Creek Massacre earlier than scholars revealed the story of Tulsa.
Dr. Shelby Balick says the Tulsa Massacre happened at a time period when there was a lot of extreme violence against black Americans, and she said it was just kind of all collectively swept under the rug. Latino leaders in Denver are calling on Denver Public Schools to halt the hiring process for its incoming superintendent and then reopen the search for somebody else. This came about because of a lawsuit against the incoming Denver superintendent, Dr. Alex Marrero. The former medical director for Marrero's old school district in New York State says she was silenced and retaliated against when she raised concerns about the district's pandemic response. Several Latino groups in Denver did not think that Marrero was the right fit to begin with, and now with this lawsuit, they want DPS to bring in someone else. Quick reminder here. Tomorrow is the one-year anniversary of your Word of Thanks micro-giving campaigns, that incredible engine of generosity that you've used to give almost $3.9 million to nonprofits across our state. Tomorrow is 1 year, and it is when we are giving away literal tokens of appreciation to the people who donate to this week's campaign. We are turning the wood pile from my old home studio, used to be like right there, into these wood tokens. You got the next stamp on one side, I will sign the other side in appreciation for what you have done for so many Colorado nonprofits over the last year. Wood pile is still being processed into the tokens, but we hope to have almost 2,000 of them. Once the tokens are gone, though, I'll be sure to send a signed thank you note to everybody who gives to our 1 year anniversary micro-giving campaign. Let's see if we can do something really special this week and top the $4 million mark.
And I see this sign that says it's not a through street, it doesn't go to Sheridan. And I'm like, wait a second, Sheridan comes to here?
We don't give them much thought, but street signs guide us every day. So if they're not telling us the truth on purpose, whoa. Marshall checks it out next. So I don't mean to be overly dramatic about this, but street signs can lead to life or death decisions. I mean, and they also do the small stuff, you know, turn this way, not that. You know, we count on street signs to tell us the truth, so we make good decisions and we can keep ourselves and other people safe. So when we heard somebody mention that there was an intentionally misleading street sign somewhere out there, Marshall Zellinger hit the road for us. Hey, Marshall.
Kyle, you know, when I was growing up, one of my favorite books was Where the Sidewalk Ends. And I finally, in my 30s, near where I lived, found a sidewalk that ended, and then there was grass. This street sign behind me suggests this is where the street ends. So I drove it. When you see a stop sign, you know it means stop. This speed hump warns of a speed hump. And between 6 a.m. and 5 p.m., the speed limit is 30 miles per hour, or you'll risk a speeding fine that gets doubled. We take signs at face value, just like this one.
I see this sign that says it's not a through street, it doesn't go to Sheridan. And I'm like, wait a second, Sheridan comes to here?
Jared Ewey is not a public works employee, you know, the people responsible for street signs, just a curious neighbor pointing out a curious sign.
Can a street sign lie? I don't see any other reason other than to keep people from going through.
The sign that says not a through street, no access to Sheridan, is where Littleton meets the town of Beaumar, population of about 900. The sign is off Berry Avenue, just west of Lowell and Goddard Middle School.
I'm sure these are all amazing people on the other side of that sign, but it's a lie. It's a total lie. You could get to Sheridan.
And Jared is right. It may not be the quickest way to Sheridan, but continue straight down this path and you'll get there. Shortly after you pass the sign, you're greeted by the Town of Beaumar sign. That's followed by a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit sign, then a stop sign with a speed hump, followed by 2 more stop signs. Then there's another stop sign and speed hump, a third speed hump, another stop sign, and then this. Where is this? Sheridan.
They could probably get away with not a through street because maybe it wiggles enough that technically it's not a through street. But then they say there's no access to Sheridan. It goes right to Sheridan.
Technically, Berry Avenue has no access to Sheridan because Berry Avenue becomes Beaumar Drive, which, as you saw, gets to Sheridan.
Wait, can a city just lie? Can you put up a sign? And if so, maybe every city gets at least one lie. You know, Denver can put full at its, city limits.
I'm still waiting to hear back from the town of Beaumar about the sign, which has been up for years, just like this one half a mile away, saying no access to Wadsworth, which is accurate because this road takes you right back to Beaumar Drive, which does not have direct access to Wadsworth, just Sheridan. While I continue to wait to hear back from Beaumar, I spoke with a spokeswoman from the city of Littleton because this is Littleton where I'm at right now. They confirm that's not their sign, and I'm going to show you why, at least what I was told why it's not their sign. This is a City of Littleton sign that says no trucks. Look at the pole here. It's silver. And then look at the, kind of misleading, not a through street sign. It's got a green pole. I'm not going to zoom in too much because I need to get back in front of the camera here. But that's what I'm told is the pole is obviously not Littleton's. I asked if Littleton, now that they know that it's kind of misleading, will Littleton remove it from city property? The public works director was not in today. I'll check again tomorrow.
They should give you an award for investigating stuff. This is fascinating to me because now, so I guess everybody just tosses up a sign to reduce traffic through their neighborhood. I'm going to put one up on my street that just says like turn around, like there be monsters or something like that.
This has been here for years, and one question I'm still waiting is, was it ever accurate? And it just hasn't come down.
Wonder if your neighborhood has to be like a certain kind of fancy before you're allowed to lie on a street sign. Maybe that's a different question for a different day. All right, thank you, Marshall. Good stuff. What is the deal with politicians pretending like they've won when they have clearly lost? Now it's happening at the state capitol. And a viewer's question leads us to look at double immunity, whether having COVID and then the vaccine protects you twice as much. Next. Just got the best email during the commercial break. Can't wait to share it with you during feedback. Anyway, news time. Colorado Supreme Court handed a loss today to the state legislature, slapped down a bill that was going to change this year's redistricting process. Court ruled that Colorado's Independent Redistricting Commission, getting its first go-around at this, is independent. Hands off, legislature. So that led to a curious reaction from House Republicans today, who put out a statement saying they are grateful that Colorado's Supreme Court upheld the independence of the commission. Which is odd, since the failed legislative effort had near unanimous support from both Republicans and Democrats. Tonight's next question comes to us from Jody.
Hey, next. I had COVID and I'm fully vaccinated. Do I have any extra immunity?
Excellent question, Jody. Let's ask UC Health's infectious disease expert, Dr. Michelle Barron.
It's almost like your seatbelt and your airbags now are there to protect you. So you have that extra layer of protection that way. The question that still remains is, does that mean I'm protected even longer than somebody that just got the vaccine or just had COVID alone? And that question hasn't been fully answered. A paper in Nature that just got published that looked at this and looked at people that got vaccinated and had COVID, natural infection, and looked at them to see like 7 months out if they could still produce antibodies and whether the immune system had that still sort of in the backdrop where it was waiting and just waiting on alert. And it was still there.
We are always game to get curious about a topic like that or anything else. So send us your questions. Just record yourself asking whatever's on your mind. You can do video, voice memo, and then email it to next@9news.com. Bottom line is, if you're wondering about something in our state, somebody else is wondering too. And your questions lead us in all kinds of interesting directions around here. So please keep them coming.
So nice to see the sun today. And even though our weekend storm is moving away from the area, enough moisture upstream that we're tracking some severe thunderstorms that are moving quickly from the northwest to the southeast tonight. Our high today at 67 will jump about another 10 degrees tomorrow. These storms will move rapidly out by about 8 o'clock tonight, and then we'll see some clearing. And even though it's going to be a warmer, drier day tomorrow, there's extensive high cloud cover, so not an entirely sunny day. Tonight, a stray storm early, then clearing, low 49 tomorrow. High clouds and mid-70s. A warming and drying trend that will see temperatures in the low to mid-80s for Thursday and Friday, close to 90 on Saturday, and just enough moisture coming in from the southwest for a stray storm both days over the weekend.
It's the most Colorado way to do a bachelor party, or a bachelorette party. It was definitely a bachelorette party. I should have looked more closely at the video. Plus your feedback next. Running the trail before walking down the aisle. It's the most Colorado thing we saw today. If you think you saw a bride blow past you on a trail outside your way, you're probably right. Carly was there for her bachelorette over the weekend. They downed some beers, they grabbed her veil, and they did a trail run on the perimeter trail. Can't be the only one thinking they should have gone over the pass and hiked Bridal Veil Falls. I don't know, whatever, just a thought. Congrats to Carly and her fiance, and keep sending us the most Colorado things you see. Email next@9news.com or give us a shout on Twitter with the hashtag #HeyNext. That's how this piece of feedback came in from Sam. As much as I love the basement studio, having you back in the 9 News studios is a little nod toward normalcy that we really needed. Welcome back. I'm typically not a big fan of normal, but it's all right. It's all right. Inger wrote in tonight about Marshall Zellinger's great story on the Lion Street sign and said, how delightful to spend so much time on a silly little topic like a street sign. Here's the turn that I love. Thank you, science. We are so grateful for the vaccines. Isn't it nice to talk about something else? We give out these tomorrow.